Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Mess. So here on a continuing series of Model Museum where I took a look at every single Sega Model 1, 2, and 3 game ever made. That's not an arcade racing game because we did that retrospective last year. And of course we have to be taking a look at Dead or Alive because this game is everything that Virtua Fighter is and also nothing like it at the same time. It was released in 1996 by Tecmo and started an absolute banger of a franchise that is still with us today. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But if you've never played the original Dead or Alive before, you 100% have to check it out. It exists on the Sega Model 2A and 2B boards. There are revisions of this game that tweak the graphics ever so slightly, and it was remastered on the original Xbox. I feel like 99% of people got their start with Dead or Alive on Dreamcast and the Sega Naomi with Dead or Alive 2, and not many people ever got a chance to play the original game. You should 100% check it out because it is still as good today as it ever was when it came out, and it 100% set the tone for the franchise moving forward, both in the mechanics and graphics as well as, joking around, the physics system of the characters. Because Dead or Alive gets the reputation, deservedly so, of having jiggle physics. They basically invented the concept, and they pushed it really hard throughout successive games. Unfortunately, that's a lot of the reason why Dead or Alive is known outside of fighting game fans, is for that jiggle physics in and of itself. I'm here to tell you that outside of that, which does exist and who cares about it really, this is a super interesting, super mechanically sound arcade fighting game that can go toe-to-toe with Virtua Fighter 2 any day of the week, and in my opinion, I actually prefer Dead or Alive over Virtua Fighter 2. But leave me a comment down below and tell me which one you like better, because I feel like we're going to get a pretty even 50-50 split of Dead or Alive fans versus Virtua Fighter fans. But honestly, if you've ever played Virtua Fighter 2 before, you're going to understand what Dead or Alive is asking of you. The only fundamental difference is how the guard button works, which is more like a grab button where you can offensively and defensively grab your opponent's limbs as they try to attack you. The reason I like Dead or Alive more than Virtua Fighter 2 is just a sensation of speed and movement. I've still never gotten used to the early Virtua Fighter games with that giant moon jump where the physics make absolutely no sense whatsoever. And I do like how Dead or Alive is slightly more grapple heavy and slightly faster of a game. But this is where the franchise from Tecmo got its start, and we're still playing Dead or Alive today. Hopefully we get a new entry in this series soon. But it started on Model 2 and it looks and plays incredible. I do like this arena where you can get your opponent to explode and fly up into the air and then juggle them if you are close enough. It has been removed in successive games. You're not going to see much like that in Dead or Alive 2, but it 100% works here, and it adds an extra mechanic that isn't just the ring out from Virtua Fighter 2. I feel like the developers that about the mechanics of that game have decided they wanted to have some penalty for getting pushed off the main play area, but they didn't want to lose the entire match by doing so. And I actually really like that because I've never been a huge fan of the ring out. Sure, I'll use it against the CPU, but I just want to finish the match and see who either has the most health left after the timer runs out or who can defeat who sooner. And I do know that sometimes the CPU and especially human players will kind of play for that ring out because it is a total theory. And if we move over to Virtua Fighter 2 here, you'll see the difference in that jumping speed and the difference in the overall speed of the game. They are close, and don't get me wrong, I 100% love Virtua Fighter 2. I just like what Dead or Alive does more here, but that is 100% subjective. But this game looks incredible on Model 2. Look at that building in the back. That skybox moves depending on where the camera is focused and your fight is going on. That is such a unique and interesting visual flair that only the games of Dead or Alive have on Model 2. I've never seen that used anywhere else, but if you can think about someplace, leave me a comment down below. But again, it's the mechanics of this game that really work. It can be a pretty fighting game, it can have great music, but if the mechanics are not sound, then who cares? The entire fighting system here works so well. The high and low and mid kicks and punches, the different combos and grapples you can do, and that grab system just work. But of course, the music is spectacular. Go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds and I'll be right back.
Get ready. Get ready.
The music just 100% works for a fighting game, and it works here for Dead or Alive. And again, when I talk about the mechanics, I just love the fluidity of this game. It is fast-paced, a match can be over in 5 to 10 seconds if you know what you're doing, and all of the different grapples and other mechanics really have a feel and a flow to the fight that works within the context of what the developers at Tecmo are trying to do. Now, of course, because this is the first game, the roster is going to be thin. You're going to get a ton more characters when you move over to something like Dreamcast or Naomi, but of course Kasumi started off the franchise and she's been there ever since as the most iconic character. But you're going to find a character that you love, you're going to find a character that you tolerate, and you're going to find some characters that you hate. Jan Lee here, kind of a character that I'll use every once in a while, has that classic sort of Bruce Lee dancing around fighting style, definitely emulating that. Or somebody like Jen Fu, a much slower, heavier hitting character. Now, I never click with Jen Fu, it's just not the speed and the cadence of a fight that I prefer. But some players are really going to love that, and that's what I appreciate about Dead or Alive, even the first game out of the gate. They give you enough characters to experiment and play around with that you can find the playstyle that you enjoy, because some people like the really fast attack and other people like more of that methodical stick and poke with the power moves. For me, Kasumi's always my main, it's just who I went with back in the day, and it's who I will continue to use here. But again, this game's fluidity is what really makes it so spectacular. And it's one of those things where this game changes so much in subsequent sequels that playing the original really shows you where the foundational ideas for Dead or Alive came. And it's not the easiest or hardest game either. You can see the ending against the CPU if you're decent, but like every fighting game, this comes alive when you have a second player in front of you who knows how to play as well. And I'm sure this is still played at fighting game tournaments. And if you know about one that's doing it, leave me a comment down below, because I would be curious. I didn't check. My assumption would be that they probably start at Dead or Alive 2 and move on from there. And that's the thing about the original game. I never hear anybody mention it. Sometimes I'll hear about Dead or Alive Extreme, the remake on Xbox. I do have that in my collection. But 9 times out of 10, if I hear Dead or Alive, it's going to be the Dreamcast and Naomi version or any game after that. But I'm going to give you one more taste of the soundtrack before I start talking about where this series evolved to on Dreamcast and Naomi. So go ahead and listen for 30 seconds and I'll be back with more game. It's such dramatic music, and in some way, shape, or form, I feel like you could take that track, put it in a 3D Castlevania game, and it would 100% work in context. It is just so much fun. But earlier I mentioned the difference between the original Dead or Alive or Dead or Alive 2 and the games further on from there. Dead or Alive kind of feels like a one-off, and the formula basically pivots from Dead or Alive 2 moving forward. You're going to get multi-stage arenas, different elevations, and you're not going to have that explosive floor going all over the place. In an arena like this, you can 100% kick through that glass and find a new layer to fight on, but you're not going to have a ring out really here, and you're definitely not going to have explosive ground. But what you do have is the same fast, fluid motion, all of the grapples, and the same fighting system with an expanded character roster. And that is why the original Dead or Alive is so important. It looks amazing on Model 2, but as we get to the second game, it really becomes the franchise that we're more familiar with. And that's why I was so excited to talk about the original Dead or Alive, because I feel like everyone's experience starts here. But leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think. But the overall vibes and the mechanical nature do carry over into the boss fight with Raido here in the original. And I will say it's not the hardest boss fight around, definitely easier than anything that's going to be on Virtua Fighter, Virtua Fighter 2, Model 1, or Model 2. This CPU doesn't give you that much. It's definitely a game that's going to be so much better if you're playing with friends, but you can basically say that about every single fighting game around. The CPU is either always too easy or always too hard. And now we're on to the second match with the boss. My favorite thing about Dead or Alive is it feels like it really straddles the line between Virtua Fighter and Tekken. Obviously, when you think of Model 2, Model 3, Model 1 fighting games, the Virtua Fighter games are always going to pop into your head. And when you think of Sony arcade hardware, you're going to go straight to Tekken. But Tecmo with Dead or Alive was also running against both Tekken and Virtua Fighter and doing as good of a job, and in some instances, in my opinion, slightly better than either of them. I love that there's this random breeze that just blows that ponytail around as well. Magic breeze in fighting games is 100% a thing that happens basically in every single game. But take my word for it, if you've never played the original Dead or Alive before, check it out today. You can play the remake on the original Xbox, but for my money, getting the Model 2 look and feel is where you want to be, and you even get these incredible cutscenes with the finale, kind of showcasing those jiggle physics one more time. Short of that, Dead or Alive 10 out of 10, and I prefer it slightly better to Virtua Fighter 2. See you guys next time. Bye bye.